So here we are on to section 4 of the Moody Blues blanket, and this section takes in a number of simple rounds of granny stripe. Not difficult to do, but in the middle we also have a round which has these individual bobble stitches, as you can see, and that's what we're going to be working through on this video. To start section 4, I've flipped the blanket once more, so we're on the wrong side, stitch markers underneath, and I'm going to start with 2 rounds of granny stripe, and I'm back to using the Stylecraft Special Denim shade. I'm starting in the corner, any corner of the blanket, just the usual way that we did. You've done the granny stripes already, but I'm just going to remind you of that cluster that we put over the top of the join. So chain 2, of course, because it's a treble stitch we're working with again, and 1 treble, 2 trebles into the corner, and then we just need to work along with 3 trebles in each space along the edge. I think there are altogether 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces between the joins in the squares. So we just put 3 trebles in each of those 5 spaces. You can see what it looks like. And I've got 1 more to do. And we've come to the point where the 2 corners meet each other. Excuse me. So remember what we do here. I bet some of you will and some of you won't. Make a treble stitch in the first corner space, and then yarn over, put your hook in, yarn over, pull up your loop, yarn over and pull through 2, leaving 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, insert your hook in the next corner space, pull through the loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and you've got 3 loops left, and yarn over and pull through all 3. And there you get that inverted V shape, which creates 1 stitch out of 2 halves, if you like, and then you finish off with 1 more treble. So therefore, although it looks like there are 2 groups of stitches there because you're going over that corner, in actual fact, when you look at the top, there's just the 3 stitches along the top. And so yeah, that's all you need to do with this. You need to work all the way around with your 3 clusters of 3 trebles, and when you get to a corner, it's treble 3, chain 2, treble 3, go around all 4 sides, and then when you come back to this point, treble 3, chain 2, and slip stitch into the first stitch. Then of course we're not changing colour for the next round, so you will chain 2 and turn the blanket over, and remember what happens. Your chain 2 appears at the immediate right hand side. If I turn like that, you'll have chained 2 and it will be on the right hand side of the corner, so you'll be making your complete corner, treble 3, chain 2, treble 3 in that first corner. And the second round is much easier because you don't have this decreasing stitch between the the joins. You'll just be working in each space along. Now I've got a count for the first round. When you've done a side of the first round, including the clusters in the corner, you should have 43 clusters, and in the next round 44 clusters, because it increases by 1 with each round. So I'll do my part blanket in these 2 rounds, and then I'll be back to show you what happens with the next part, because that's there's a section of 3 rounds of granny stripe, which is a little bit more interesting. So I'll come back at that. I've just left you to follow the pattern and make the 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds of granny clusters in the colours. I've made them on my sample piece, but I'm just showing you what the next round looks like, because we've got a second round of the French navy. So we've got denim, denim, lobelia, French navy, and this is a second round of French navy. But while we're making that round, we're also putting in these bobble stitches, and they give a really nice high texture onto the blanket. Now, these bobble stitches are worked on the reverse side. So this is the front of the blanket, just to let you see what they look like. But on the reverse, they're just flat stitches, just flat little shapes. It's all the textures on the front. So I'll put the blanket, this is the finished blanket, I'll put that away for the time being. So round 2 of the French navy, and this is the round that has the bobble stitch incorporated in it. So you'll have come to the end of round 1, and you'll have chained 2 and turned, and your chain 2, of course, is at the very extreme right of that corner space. So you want to put in your 1, 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles, 3 trebles. That's just normal practice. This treble, this cluster of trebles on this side of the blanket is going to be classed as the first cluster, because we're going to do 3 clusters of French navy between each bobble. So that's the first one made, and then all I need to do is come along and make another one, 2, 3, and then I'm going to start to make the third one. So that's 1 treble, 2 trebles, that's normal, and then I'm going to start the third treble. I'm going to get as far as pulling the yarn through the first 2 loops, and I've got 2 loops on my hook, and at this point I'm going to stop, because this is where we introduce the colour for the bobble, and we're going to be working with the Stylecraft Special in the shade Grape, and this is it here. So I'm going to attach my grape yarn by simply folding it over the hook and pulling it through the 2 loops. And then I've now got a short end of grape, a long end of grape, and the long end of the French navy, which we aren't going to cut. We're going to leave that French navy, and I just make sure that that first stitch, this first grape stitch, which can be quite wobbly, I just tighten it all by just tying my short end of the bobble colour onto the French navy, and that just makes that stitch a little bit more secure. Right, so we're now got grape on the hook, and the French navy can just lie up along the top, because we're going to work over the top of it to get to the next stitch for the bobble stitch, and that's going to be worked in the next space along. So just leave that lying on the top, yarn over and put your hook into the space, pull up your loop, yarn over, pull through 2 and stop. Yarn over again, into the space, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 and stop. You've got 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over again, pull up their loop, pull through 2, 4 loops. Yarn over again, and now you've got 5 loops. And I'm going to make this quite a big bobble stitch, so I'm going to actually go as far as ending up with 6 loops on the hook. And at this point I'm going to pull through all of the 6 loops, and that's my bobble stitch made. Now I'm going to cut, my decision is to cut my grape yarn and finish it off after every bobble. Why? Well, bobble stitch can be made by carrying the yarn if you're doing a fairly dense background stitch like treble, half treble or double crochet, which is quite a firm background, and the carrying colour isn't seen. But with the openness of the granny clusters, I feel that it's not a good idea, because you see an awful lot of this grape colour being carried along. So the other reason is that if I tie that off nice and firmly, the bobble forms a nice firm circle, a kind of sphere, or half sphere if you like. It's much more defined, I think, when you tie these nice and firmly. And so that is bobble stitch, and we're going to make a chain just to get back to the French navy and continue. So we've got 3 more French navy clusters to do. 1, 2, 3, and another made quite straightforwardly. 2, 3, and then we've got the third one to do, but this is the one where we make 2 complete trebles. 1, 2, and then start the third one and leave it with 2 loops on the hook, and then we can pick up our grape again, bend it over and pull it through, and you don't actually have to tie it off, but because you do have a lot of ends there, but I just found as I was working it was nice to have, because it does get tied off and sewn in later, but it is nice to have a firm stitch on the hook. It's not loose. So there we go. And the French navy just lies along the top, and we can start to make our second bobble stitch. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, which you end up with 6 loops on your hook, and then pull through all 6 loops. You can cut your yarn and tie it off to that other end. This does not stop you from having to sew the ends in, I'm afraid. Just tying simply like that can easily come back out again, so don't just think you can leave it at that and then pull your French navy through and off you go again. Now you can see that they're quite flat on the back, but there's a good bump when you, in fact you can actually just give them a little helping hand to push them through to the front, and they become quite a nice textured bobble stitch. So you will just need to work around all four corners, all four sides with this bobble stitch. 3 clusters of treble stitch between each bobble, and when you get to the end you'll do your last bobble stitch before your last 2 clusters and then the corner. And I'll work along a little bit with mine, and I'll see you when I'll come back along this way and show you what happens just before we get to the very end of this round. Right, we're going to play Let's Pretend now. Let's pretend that this side that I'm working up to is just coming to the end of your first side. So it's just to let you know what you do when you get to the end of your row. So I've got to a point where my granny clusters, I've got, this is the third one, and there are 2 loops left on the hook ready to join my grape yarn. And as usual, I just give it a quick catch into the dark blue just to hold it in place, and then lay my dark blue along the top and start my bobble. That's 3 loops, 4 loops, 5 loops, 6 loops. Pull through all 6 and then pick up the dark blue to anchor it, and then I can cut my grape yarn and just tie it off. You don't have to tie it, you can just leave the 2 ends and sew them in, your choice. I don't normally tie things off, but I just found that doing that my bobble stitches seem to hold nice and firmly. So then we've just got to do the 2 spaces before the corner with the 3 treble stitches in them. Now you will have a corner to make if this is just the end of your first side, but this is the end of my 4th side, if you like, because I'm back to where I started. So I'll just slip stitch into that first stitch and finish off. Now I'm finishing this off. You actually don't need to finish yours when you get to the 4th side, because you've got another round of this French navy to go without any bobbles in it. So I'll be showing you, I have to finish it off because my sample doesn't go all the way round. So there are the bobbles, and you want to turn your blanket again for your next round, and that's as usual. You would normally turn it, and I'm just going to start my French navy because you don't need to, you'll just be chaining 2 and turning, and because it's the 3rd round, your nearest space to start working in will be the first space after the corner, so you just need to put 2 trebles in that and carry on. You've done that before. Right, so I'm going to start this, and I'm going to make my round, my 3rd round of the French navy. As you can see, this is now becoming a very strange looking blanket sample because these stripes are not going all the way around. This is just for the video. So I'm just going to start a cluster in the middle. I just want to show you how easy it is to work over the top of those bobble stitches. There's nothing fancy that you need to do. So you've got a space, and then you've got another space. So you're just going to put 3 treble stitches in the space before the bobble stitch, and then 3 treble stitches in the space after the bobble stitch. That's all you need to do. And there you see it, and how nice and raised it looks against the dark blue. So you just need to work your 3rd round of the French Navy. Nothing fancy with that round, you just work all the way around with your usual treble 3, chain 2, treble 3 in the corners. And then when you get back to where you started, you just need to finish that off, because we're going to repeat this colour again. So you're going to do a round of lobelia and then just 1 round of the denim. And I'll do a bit of that and come back and let you see what it looks like. So here is what section 4 will look like once you've finished it. After the 3rd round of French Navy, there was 1 round of lobelia and then a round of denim. And I've turned the blanket so the reverse side of the denim is uppermost, but we're back onto the front of the blanket again. And all the little bobbles have their ends neatly sewn in, and that will be time to move on to section 5. Now, section 5 is another round of granny squares. They're quite big ones this time, and there's a lot of colour change in it, but it makes for a very interesting round of squares. The colour kind of blends from dark to light. Obviously, we are at a very dark part of the blanket at the moment, and it's going to get lighter again before we're finished. So section 5 has large granny squares, and then there's section 6, which kind of repeats this part again with the bobble stitch and the rounds of granny stripe. And then we have section 7, which repeats the small squares of small granny squares and the final border. So once I'll come back and show you how to make the large granny square, and then after that I'm leaving it to you, because the other sections are repeats of earlier ones, so I won't be doing video tutorials for them, but I will come back at the very end to show you how to do the final stitch on the border. So first of all, section 5 coming up next. And I'm just jumping in quickly again to give you the stitch counts for the clusters for each round of these granny stripes. So round 1 in denim, to remind you, was 43, round 2 44, round 3, which was lobelia, 45, and then we've got the 3 rounds of French Navy, so 46, 47, 48, and back to lobelia, 49, and finally the last round, which is probably the round that you need to know most definitely how many how many clusters there are. There are 50 along each side, and that includes the clusters at either end in the corners. So we've got 50 clusters, and that is the count that you need for joining the next section.